Hi, it's Gary here, and this is Zen Paddling. Today, in this second video, I'm going to discuss some of the concepts behind the idea of Zen Paddling. And I'm also going to show you just 2 exercises you can do at home and then take into the boat. But I'll start with a question, and I think I know what the answer is. Do you want to feel more stable in the boat under bumpier conditions? And do you want to go faster? I guess the answer to both of those questions is yes, because we all love being in racing K1s or K2s. Now, how do you know when you're going faster? Well, you can compare yourself to other people. Maybe you usually lose to them, but you put more effort in today or they put less in. Their mind's not in the game, but yours is, and you beat them. Doesn't mean you're going faster. You could look at your time trials, your 10k time trial times, and one day you might be quicker than the other. But you have no idea why. The conditions might be different. For example, more wind, less wind, more tide, less tide. What Zen Paddling does is give you an internal speedometer. Your body will feed back that it's going quicker through the water. And it depends on one of Newton's laws of physics, and that's every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So let's break the stroke down into its most fundamental concept. I have here a replacement for a paddle. It's my good old thumbstick. Imagine the V is the blade. What I'm going to do is I'm going to lock the blade in the water, and it needs to stay where it is. We need to move past the blade. Looking at it from the side, the blade goes in, it stays where it is, and we move past it. If the blade moves through the water, we have lost delivery of force against the water via the blade. If any of our body parts bend during that levering past the blade, we lose energy into the universe. If some of our body parts don't move through a horizontal plane but go up, we again lose force on this blade, and you can see it's going upwards, or it might go outwards. So what we're looking for is to know when we are locked on that blade. And there's only 3 places we can, well 4 maybe, we can sense. It's where we touch the boat and we touch the shaft of your paddle. Let's look at the places we touch the boat. One is your butt. You sit in the seat. But actually, we're not very good at sensing subtle changes in pressure in our butt muscles. We just sit on them. Now the other place, of course, is where our feet push against the footrest. And we can use our mind to be able to recognize when we change pressure on the footrest. And that is the only place where maximum amounts of force generated on the blade are transferred to the boat. So the boat is moving through the water because the paddle blade locked in the water is connected directly to the footrest. So, the more pressure we feel through our feet on the footrest, the more pressure is being applied to this locked blade. More pressure, faster we're going. So the first exercise that I want you to do and practice is simply going onto the balls of your feet. Close your eyes if you want to. Breathe slowly and deeply. And then just move your attention in your mind to the pressure you feel on the balls of your feet. And it'll wobble a bit. Now our minds love to wander, and that's fine. Once you know your mind has wandered from feeling the pressure on your feet, recognize it and gently bring your attention back to what you wish to attend to, which is the pressure on your feet. And then after a while, just move your balance onto your left foot. And notice the difference in pressure. There's an increase in pressure on your left foot and a decrease on your right foot. And then come back to center and notice how they equilibrate and what the difference between them is. And then go on to your right foot, on the ball of your toes. And notice how much extra pressure there is on your right foot now and how little there is on your left foot. And come back to the center, still on the balls of your toes. Your heels are off the floor. Now you can go onto one leg again and kind of give it a relative score. If being balanced in the middle is a 5, and the maximum you can have is a 10 and the minimum 0, what's the score on your right foot for pressure? It's probably not a 10 because you've still got a bit of pressure on the other foot. Could be an 8. And get used to scoring the pressure you sense through your feet, because this is the motion of a stroke. We're going to go from one foot to the other foot. Now in the boat, when you've done this practicing, not just for 10 or 20 strokes, but for hundreds of strokes, noticing the pressure on your feet as each leg does its job, and then you score the pressure. That's great practice, and it also helps a little bit with timing. So in the boat, a 0 for pressure is I can't actually feel the footrest, and a 10 is if I press any harder I feel like I'm going to snap the footrest. So it's somewhere in between. And this is accelerator or speedo 1, pressure on the feet. And what I would do is just practice that the next time you're out paddling. Obviously, take care of the conditions. As I make this video, the river is roaring along, so you've got to keep your eyes open and your mind ready. There's nothing stopping you taking, when it's clear, taking 50 to 100 strokes, just sensing the pressure. More pressure, more effort is going onto the blade. Boat's going faster. Where's the other places that you can recognize force? Well, one is the bottom hand, and how much grip do I have to apply as I'm going through the power phase to hold the blade, the shaft in my hand. So if I don't hold it enough and I've locked it in the water and then I really drive, it's going to go ping. So I can gauge how much I have to resist, not necessarily grip really hard, but almost like in a hook shape. What are my fingers having to do to prevent that happening? And then accelerator or speedo 3, if this is 2, the bottom hand, 3 is the palm of the top hand. Because if we get the stroke right, we can go down and through the stroke with a completely open palm. And this is the fulcrum. It's a bit like the rollock in a rowing boat. Only we don't have rollocks, we have top hands. So the more pressure we feel in that top hand, the more we are connecting all of our body effort through to the locked blade. So speedometer 1 is the balls of our feet, 2 is the fingers on the bottom hand, 3 is the palm of the top hand. And all I want you to do is really, from now on, go through them one at a time, noticing how much pressure. Just notice. Don't change anything yet. Just notice. Because we need to develop, in Zen paddling, the ability to focus intentionally on different parts of our body. Today it's all about feet and hands. In the future it'll be hips and knees, shoulders and solar plexus. But that comes later. I did promise you a couple of simple exercises, and I'm just going to have to swap the image, so I'll see you in a second. Hello again. Still video 2. So we now know where our speedos are, balls of our feet, bottom hands, fingers, top hands, palm. So now we want to introduce just one extra thing that you can do in the boat or at home in order to see if you're going to become more efficient, more powerful, without having to do any really big grunty stuff. Now, as I've said in the first video, and I always say, paddling is more a pushing sport than it is a pulling sport. And you must have had many people tell you, you've got to rotate more. Well, that doesn't mean anything. When most people are told to rotate more, they do this. They just rotate their shoulders. Now, that's part of rotation, but the paddle stroke starts at the feet, comes up your legs, into your hips and lower back. That's where rotation and power is generated. The rest of the body is adding a bit of force, but its job is mostly about applying that force to the water, making sure the blade is in the right place, I'm not giving away here, and I'm not losing any energy. So what we're looking for is an active pelvis, the core. You can do loads and loads of core exercises and still not apply the force correctly. So one of the things I would like you to consider, and certainly Ivan Lawler in some of his videos explains it really well, is we want a pelvic rotation that's applied on both sides. So imagine I'm going to take a left hand stroke. I'm going to bury what is now my left hand. It looks like it might be your right. I'm going to push down on this leg and I'm going to rotate. But my knees are not really doing very much, and I'm rotating mostly at my chest. And I'll show you the lateral view in a second. What I want you to think about and practice before you get on the water. Do it at home. Make sure you've got a cushion you can sit on, raising your bum a bit higher than your heels. I want you to imagine you're pushing down on the left leg, as you take a stroke. And I want to lift my hips upwards as I push. I also want you to think with that Zen mind, same Zen mind that we were doing the pressure on the balls of your feet, I want you to pay attention to the opposite hip. If this is the paddle side and this is the top hand side, what's happening to the hip on the top hand side as you bring the stroke through? Does it move at all? Is it passive and it moves because the other side is moving? Or are you actually pulling it forwards as the paddle side hip goes backwards? Are you actively moving the top hand hip forwards? If you are, great, but we can do more. The exercise, once you've noticed what it's doing, is to intentionally make it more active. So you always do a change of something by noticing what you're doing at the moment and kind of giving it a mental score and then adding something. So it's always an A plus B experiment. Otherwise you don't know whether it's improved anything. So we're going to put the blade in the water, push down on the left foot, and then actively bring the opposite hip as if it was aiming for the other knee. So this is my right hip, and as I pull on the blade, I'm bringing my right hip towards my left knee. Now I've got whole body rotation going on that side. And you can practice that for 20, 30, 40, 50 strokes, paying attention to the opposite hip. Do it one side to start with. And when you think you've got a connection in your mind to that hip, do it with the other hip. So I'm pushing on now my right leg, pushing, and I'm bringing my left hip across towards my opposite knee. And if I keep doing that, you'll hear maybe the whoosh of my bum on this pad, and that's my butt doing this in a horizontal plane. So what I've done is really efficiently take the force that I'm generating in my legs, adding force at the hips. Now I can add a little bit more force from the lower back on the pull. So it's just, the lower back is just adding. It isn't giving all of the force. So that's the exercise. Let's look at it from the side. I'll take my imaginary paddle. My feet are up against a wall. The blade is going in about my feet, and I'm going to pull on the right, and my opposite hip is being pulled right across the body line. And you'll come to what I call the anatomical stop, which is your pelvis will not move any further across. It goes clunk. That is full rotation. You cannot physically go any further, but your shoulders can. So you could go in really far, drive opposite hip across. I've hit the anatomical stop, but I've got a little bit more before the blade is at my hip. My hand is halfway up my thigh, and I can take the blade out. So if you practice that exercise of bringing the opposite hip across horizontally, you don't want it going up or down, just horizontally. Get that embedded. Then notice the difference in the pressure on your 3 speedos, particularly your feet. You also, after a while, go, was I ever worried about stability? Because stability comes from lowering the center of gravity below your belly button. And if you paddle shoulders, it raises the center of gravity of the stroke. So you're more likely to do this, wobble, because you're further up, your center of gravity is further away from the water. If you create your rotation from the legs and the hips, not only do you present more power, you lower the center of the gravity of the stroke closer to the water. That means all of the force that you're generating is close to the water. That means the boat goes faster. for the same amount of effort. Because after all, we want to go faster without killing ourselves. If we're losing force because of the inefficiency of our stroke, we've got plenty of extra force we can hold on to without having to work harder. And what difference does this mean? Well, if you were doing a 1,000-meter race and you lose the race by 9 meters, you only have to be 1% more efficient per stroke to win the race. Just one. So imagine what being 5% more efficient is. And unless you are already an elite paddler who's probably close to 90% efficiency, there's an awful lot of extra room to take advantage of. So let's just round up where we've been. We all want to go faster. There's lots of spare capacity in our stroke. We have 3 speedos: balls of the feet, fingers of the bottom hand, palm of the hand, that's the top hand. Our job in Zen paddling is to learn how to pay attention to the forces we feel in those bits of our bodies. That's how we know our stroke is going to be more efficient. We then will start introducing little exercises like the opposite hip coming across to trigger rotation. Play with those first. Don't get overwhelmed and try and look at every video I produce. It's probably going to be 1 a week, and each week you can add one little thing. So it'll be, first of all, play with the sensing, the pressure sensing. Don't try and do anything else. Just play. Can I train my mind when I want it to concentrate on the pressure in my feet? That's it. And if my mind wanders, and it will, is gently, without judgment, don't berate yourself, just invite your attention back to the pressure. It might only be 10 strokes to start with. It might be more. Eventually, it can be 1,000 strokes, but you end up doing it unconsciously, not consciously. So we have to practice and practice and practice until we become unconsciously competent. That's what the elite athletes become, because they train to sense how they're paddling. So, happy paddling, and I'll see you in video 3. Thank you.